welcome to another episode of Just Us Dads. Thank you for tuning in to another Dadversation. If we're meeting for the first time, head on over to our YouTube channel, subscribe, like, do us the favor, help support our channel. Let's get right into this, ladies and gentlemen. Today is our friend George's birthday. He's turning 52, and he looks younger than ever. Happy birthday, man.
Happy birthday, George.
Thank you, boys.
The truth is that we had kind of forgotten. He had to remind us. He told us, come on, guys, let's whip out.
I kind of forgot too, don't worry.
He's like, let's whip out a quick one because it's my birthday. I'm like, oh, shit, it's true. So how old are you now? 44?
42.
Wow, 42?
Yeah.
Oh, you're only 2 years older. I thought you were older than us. I think
Well,
actually I said the exact same.
I'm just more wise.
He says that every year. Every year.
I think last year when we had
He does say that.
I had
Every year.
if we go back to last year's episode on your birthday, it was probably the same comment I said.
It's +4. Next year, it's going to be like, what? You're 45. Really?
So how does it feel, George? Does anything change?
Is it bedtime yet? I have been 42 for a while. Today's just official.
Yeah.
I mean, you're actually there before you get there. You know that.
We actually commented something, I think last episode or 2 episodes ago, about turning 40, where things just go downhill. I mentioned the vulnerability we have about farting. It's just not safe anymore. You go piss and you just suddenly get the urge of, let me just sit down for this one. I'm not so sure about. I'm just not sure about what we're doing here. I think I'm gonna sit down for this one.
I'm not ready to give this one a number.
It's somewhere in between 1 and 2. We don't know. Let's not risk it. Oh my God! Yeah, that's what happens, man. You hit 40.
And that hasn't happened to me, so I
No?
don't know. Maybe you should talk to the doctor about your problem.
I don't think it's a problem. It's just that, I don't know, man. I've noticed it. I'm just borderline 40. So, I'm starting not to trust myself anymore.
I don't know. I understand George because I've been peeing girly style for a good 5 years now.
It's not because you don't trust the fart. He doesn't trust his farts.
No, me, it's just I just want to sit down. Public places only. I stand up for public places. Even a friend's house, like at your places, like I sit down.
Yeah, it's neater. I appreciate that.
All right, no
You have
problem.
less splashback.
Yeah,
No splash, no nothing.
a splash.
Yeah.
It's true.
And you can't miss.
Yeah.
And the problem is my son has been seeing me and like he sits as well. And I'm like, it's too early, man. Wait till you're 40.
It's too early. You're gonna be.
It's too early.
Your friends aren't ready for this.
Yeah. I don't want you getting bullied already. No, but
Yeah, man.
the question is how has he seen you? Like, what, you just go with the door open?
No. It's just like he will walk in and I didn't lock the door. And it's like, what are you doing? And it's like, well,
He actually stops to ask. His reflex is, oh shit, sorry.
well, look,
Right, what are you doing?
when he doesn't get killed by the smell, it's like, what are you doing?
Oh, your kids don't walk in on you while you're in the bathroom, George?
Actually, lately
It's
they
happened.
stop.
It happens.
Yeah.
What it is, you're not used to them stopping to have a conversation. That's
Yeah. No, but lately they don't. They come, they knock. Like we're there. So even now the old one, because when she goes, she often just doesn't close the door. So I'll just happen to pass. I was like, "Hey, stop looking! You're not allowed to look." So she repeats things they probably teach in school, right? Well, we've also told her, like you don't bring company into the bathroom. You know what I mean?
You know what, George? You're gonna start getting the curiosity look soon. Just curiosity, like,
What's happening over there?
yeah, just out of curiosity, you'll get a few of those.
Man. So yeah, anything special planned for today, George, or it's already happened?
What are you talking about? And it's past his curfew.
it already happened. Yeah. Wake up really early. I'm 42.
Man. Did you guys ever think, like, when you think back, did you ever think that this is what 40 was going to be like? Like, I don't know. Did you ever think ahead, like when you were in your 20s? Did you ever think, I wonder what I'll be like or look like or feel like when I'm 40? or 45.
You know what, man? Other than the last incident I had where I yawned and I pulled my back, other than that, I love 40, man.
Yeah.
Like, it's a good time. It's a good time in my life, and it's a good time. I don't know. I find the maturity.
What I'm asking is, like,
the brain.
had you ever, like, when you were younger, had you ever thought of how might you be when you're 40, and now you're thinking, was this how I thought of myself?
Yeah. But when I was younger, I remember 40 being old.
Yeah.
40 was old.
Yeah.
Think about it. When you were like 19, 20, like 40 was like, oof, double that, right? You had to double your age to get there. It was really old. Now it's like, it's not that old, man. It's young.
Yeah.
You know what you realize at 40? How stupid you are at 20.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's going to be the same thing.
Younger, though.
Yeah, you probably, at 60, you probably realize how stupid you were at 40. So I don't know. But like, you pretty much realize how dumb you were at 20, at 40. Yeah.
I think I realized how dumb I was at 20 when I was in my 20s.
No, I didn't.
What the stupid shit we did.
It wasn't stupid then. It was just you tolerated the risk. Yeah, experimental. It was risk, and you liked the risk.
Yeah.
You were seduced by the risk.
You had a safety net, so it was worth trying it for the experience.
Yeah. But that's for another episode.
Guaranteed. Yeah, we're screwing these up. Let's get on to the program. We have something very serious to talk about. This is I don't know if it's a trend or I don't know if it's something coming. I heard this for the first time when Chris told me about this maybe a couple years ago. I had no idea what it was. Chris told me about it because, obviously because of the experience you have in the teaching environment. I'm not so sure I understood it fully when you were explaining it to me, but as the years have passed, we hear about it more and more, and not only as a human being, but more so as a parent. I'm just not sure where I stand. In fact, I'm not even so sure that I support it, right? So we're going to talk today about safe spaces. We're going to talk about trigger warnings, microaggressions, all that kind of stuff. Obviously, this pretty much happens in older aged kids. We're not talking about kids that are our age, obviously, right?
It's more college, university,
young adults. Yeah. So first of all, just bring us into the context, Chris, because I don't know where we're at. I don't know if it's here yet. I don't know if it's implemented. So let's just explain to everybody a little bit what we're talking about here, and then we're going to have that discussion about how we feel and in general how as parents we would feel if ever our kid were to be in that sort of situation.
All right. So, this is something that was kind of pretty much observed in about 2013, 2014, predominantly in the States, right? So this is something that you see more in the US and the UK. It did come to Canada, more in Ontario, and it's kind of like infiltrating a little bit colleges and universities. So what this is about is, we could talk later about what the experts think and where it's coming from, like where they attribute the cause, actually. But generally, a safe space would be something where if something, it's a time off where a kid doesn't necessarily want to hear something that has to be said by a teacher, whether it's something difficult, maybe rape or abortion or incest, something that is a little bit, and they'll need a safe space, meaning they'll need to escape that content. They need to escape from being exposed to these ideas. So a microaggression will be something a little bit different. A microaggression will be something like you're saying something that is not derogatory. It's not really condescending, but the way the person perceives it could be. So that would be a microaggression. Example, you're asking an ethnic person or where they're from, right? That could be a microaggression. The problem with a microaggression is that if it's intentional, it's one thing. And if it's not intentional, it's a totally different thing, but it's still considered a microaggression.
Right.
And a trigger warning would be something like, I'm about to say something to you. So I'm about to talk about, I don't know, some kind of literature, or I'm about to expose you to a book that has maybe example incest in it. So what I have to do is I have to give you a trigger warning, prepare you that if you do not want to sit through the class, well, you can leave. So you see that all these things now, it's like two major problems. One problem is free speech, right? Teachers cannot say what they need to say. And the other problem is that, well, it's not free speech. It's like, how delicate are our kids? Why are they so afraid to be offended? And how can we live in a culture where people need to be protected from books, ideas, thoughts, people? And this is what actually causes the cancel culture, because you're trying to cancel people now. You're trying to cancel things. You're trying to say, no, we can't hear the idea.
Well, that's happened in professional environments where, and we saw this in Quebec here, where a journalist, during a meeting with her colleagues, I don't know if they were going over the programming or whatever they're going through, she made a reference to a book that was written in a very long time, that spoke about some racial issue that today obviously would never even be published, right? We're talking about a very older, an older book. And because she actually cited a passage in that book, I don't know if it was the title of the book or a passage in the book, she got in trouble. They fired her. She lost her job.
There you go. So
and
you see,
there was the case of the teacher. I think it was in the University of Ottawa. I think it was the University of Ottawa. I think it was there, where her too. It was, she made reference to a book. It was the title of a book. It was the actual title of a book, and some kids, quote unquote, revolted, and she lost her job. And I remember there was this whole movement by university, like the Quebec academia, condemning that action of that university. So Quebec, you're right. Quebec is a little kind of on a different.
There's more pushback. They have a little bit more of a backbone. But you see, that's what we're saying. So we spoke about UK, US. In the US, Berkeley already there were fires, there were riots because they wanted to. They didn't want a speaker there. I don't forget which speaker it was, but Evergreen State College, same thing. So you see, the ethos is coming into Quebec. That's how it starts. It doesn't start with a whole generation. It doesn't start with a whole university. It starts with 1, 2, 3 cases. And then if you don't stand strong against it, because there's obviously things against that. If you're for it, there's very little arguments. But if you're against stuff like that, there's a lot of arguments. And there's the experts like Jonathan Haidt, guys like that actually do the research. They're going to tell you, well, point 1, 2, 3, 4, well, this is not a good idea. And as parents, it's like, what would you do? Would you want your kid to act like that? I wouldn't.
Okay, wait. So first of all, let's look at it from a societal issue, from a societal stand, and then we'll look at it from how we feel as parents, and our kids, hypothetically, if ever they were in there. From a societal point of view, we're going into, if we're not already, into a situation, into a society, into an environment, into a context where this sort of thing exists. So, especially in academia, where you would imagine this is the space where it's where your mind flows free. You have the freedom of expression, like anything kind of goes. Obviously, we're not talking about hatred here, right? We're not talking about hate speech. We're not talking about inciting violence or anything like that. But when we're talking about ideas, and when we're talking about teachings and all that stuff, anything should go in university. And this is where our students' brains need to be challenged, and challenged in a way where you're going to be confronted with opposition, and it's up to you to figure out whether or not you debate it, whether or not you just ignore it and move on, or whether or not you adopt it, right? The position. So I mean, and I have a problem with the fact that everything has to be so scrutinized, everything has to go through 1,000 filters, and again, we're not talking about hate speech. We're not talking about racism. We're not talking about sexism. We're not talking about any of these things that obviously are bad. We're talking about, situations where, in an analysis or in a context of explanation, and in a context of, in general, academia, you can find that smallest little detail to say, oh, excuse me, what do you mean these people, right? Like, example. And it's dangerous. Like, these things should not exist in this kind of setting. This is my personal opinion.
No, I agree. So we're not going to have much of a debate here, because I think we both agree. We'll hear what George has to say too. But there is proponents of this. There are people that think this is a good way to go about it. And then the bad thing about it is, you spoke about society. I think the societal issue, obviously, is what you're saying, is that you gotta prepare a kid for the jungle, right? That's the idea. That's the analogy. So they gotta get those little dosages in small increments, whether it's teases, discomfort, whatever it is. If they get it in little dosages, right, their mind gets exposed to it, kind of gets used to the idea, so now they can handle the big stuff.
You get desensitized.
Well, that's what you need to do, right? But if you don't go through that, you don't go through the growing pains, you don't go through the discomfort, you don't go through people having opposite views to yours, what happens is when you're exposed to the big stuff, it hurts. It makes you uncomfortable, and you're looking for a parent. You're looking for somebody to make it better for you. And then you raise your hand and you call those, whatever they're called, bias response teams in colleges, where they'll figure out something to do. They're either going to bring the person to, they're going to either... Thing? Yeah, absolutely.
Bias response teams.
Yeah, and these things are in bathrooms, they're in hallways, and it's like, you know what, if everybody says something you don't like, feelings first, and everything, that's the problem with that. So what we're doing is that, and I agree with George, what he said, the university is the place where ideas are kind of like exposed, they're kind of like challenged. It's a battleground of ideas.
It's not like, I mean, you guys, George, you said kids a couple of times. They're young adults.
Yeah. Well, young adults. Yeah.
They should be able to speak at that level without being overly sensitive to touch something that they're not comfortable with. Just they should get used to confronting them and get adjusted to it rather than just hide away.
So where are we now? Like here in Quebec, for example, where we're at, does this is it implemented, or what's happening? Is it being discussed? Because I'm clueless with this thing. Like, I was exposed to this when you told me about it, Chris, and I thought that this is very strange. I'm not sure.
When you're saying implemented how? Like
in universities and workspaces.
Well, they're like,
what are you implementing? You're implementing a staff. You're implementing an infrastructure.
An infrastructure,
a safe space. You're
so a space is actually a place.
Well, it's not necessarily a physical space. It could be just like removing you from the space where the learning happens, and it's like go for the walk or go in a room where you can listen to your music.
So basically, implementing new rules to adapt.
That's right. So
to this.
The way I see it permeating a bit in the university and the colleges where I teach in college, right? So universities, I kind of know what's going on because I have some friends and we talk about this stuff. But it's the way you said, George. It's a couple of cases, a couple of things that we don't know how to handle. You start getting new regulations. Every student comes, you see the code permanent, right, in Quebec. You see the student number. And then there's an asterisk next to the name. If that's the case, then that student has to be treated differently. So you have to call your coordinator and say, how do I deal with this?
So that makes no sense to me.
So basically,
we're creating categories of children, of adults, instead of putting them all in a group and saying, look, this is what you will learn in this class. If you agree, stay. If you don't, feel free to challenge it.
But they don't think like that. You know why? They don't think like that because they don't see it. They see it as a client.
Wasn't there an example you told me about in one of your classes?
There was. There's a few. I don't know if I want to get into the details of it. Rather it be maybe not known.
Yeah.
But there's cases. There's always these little cases, and it's the paperwork becomes bigger. The rules become bigger. You got to read more things. You read more, and you can say less. And then you have people that are going to just end up not saying anything at all. Because if you're going to say anything interesting, you're going to offend somebody.
Yeah.
Right? There's no way that there's a whole 30, 40, 50, 100 people, right? Sometimes the atriums, you give classes to 100 people. There's no way one sentence, right? There's no way that everyone is going to agree with that one sentence.
Yeah.
All right? There's a lot in the world. There's a lot of opinions. Right? The problem is that it's fine if you get offended I'm not even going to say that. It's fine if you disagree with something. But the idea that you have to be protected from being offended is where the problem is, because now you're infringing on my rights to my free speech. And I agree with you. Free speech maybe has certain limits, right? But if I'm not inciting violence on you, if I'm not hurting you, if I'm not insulting you in any way, I cannot tolerate how truth hurts you
Yeah.
I won't tolerate that truth hurts you. That's your problem in a way, and you have to deal with it. And the problem is that when you don't see backbone or leadership from the colleges or the universities, and they just let that happen and say, whoa, here, well, you know, the teachers are in charge. And if you don't like it, that's fine. Challenge the teacher back. I say it. I'm a very open teacher. It's like, how about that? You guys disagree with that? A lot of times you can disagree because I'm teaching a theorem, some kind of mathematical theory or a physical theory. It's obviously like around engineering.
Yeah.
So if you really dispute that, if you really dispute that, that's great. Let's bring it to a committee, and then you could be the next inventor. You know what I mean? There's but when it comes to certain ideologies, people can express what they want to express, and truth, even if it's the truth, how can the truth hurt you? You could disagree with the fact. You could say, I wish the facts weren't like that, but they still remain facts. So why would you get offended by it?
But that brings us into a whole other debate about free speech in Canada and whether or not it really exists. I mean, it does. I mean, but you know, it's very much different from what the U.S. has, right? I mean, we have legislation here that is against hate speech, and I think we've had this conversation before. It's very highly debated, like what is considered hate speech, right? Because if I'm inciting violence, or if I'm you know, if I'm spitting out racial slurs or whatever, that's already criminal. So why are we creating another category of and calling it hate speech when already I'm not allowed to do that? I cannot incite violence. I cannot be racist, right? I mean, like, you can't do that.
But there's a difference, right? There's a difference. And I side with the Americans on this. They have their First Amendment. Their First Amendment is the protection of their free speech. They can say whatever they want. There's no hate speech laws in the US. Now, a lot of Americans want hate speech laws. I side with the Americans that don't want hate speech laws. You should protect hate speech. Even if, like, even hate speech for me is still speech. But that has to be protected.
That's the question. Is hate speech real? Like, I mean,
of course it is. Of course it is, but it's still free speech, meaning that you're allowed to be mean. You're allowed to be wrong. And we want to hear the good ideas. How are you going to separate good ideas from bad ideas?
By the way, just for everyone listening, let's just clarify. We're not saying that that's what we should do. We're saying that it exists. You know, like, anyone can come out and say to a black individual, "Oh, you guys, you're all thieves, and you guys, you're all lazy, and you guys don't work." That in Canada could very well be considered hate speech, but at the same time, the guy's saying what he wants. You don't have to accept what he's saying. He's not saying you guys should all die and you guys should all burn in hell. That's
different. That's different. When you're inciting violence,
exactly,
that's a whole different thing.
That's why here in Canada the line is so fine, right? And we don't know. You come out, you say something, and they throw you into the category of hate speech. And is it really hate speech? And that's why there's a big question. This is not me. I'm not asking that question. I'm just saying that this debate exists on whether or not hate speech is real. Like, does hate speech exist? When it's like, the categories are two. It's either you're inciting violence or you're expressing yourself freely, which you have the right to do so. And it could be bad what you're saying. It could be ridiculous. It could be stupid. It could be all those things. But so long as it's not in the category of, you know, racism or violence, do we need to question it?
Well, look, that's a debate. Some people are for it or against it. Some people believe that all free speech is free speech. And there's obviously people that say you should draw the line somewhere. And that's a legitimate debate to have. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about saying things in order for students to take in the material, right? And analyze it, scrutinize it, make something out of it, because it's going to mold the idea. If you like the idea, you want to know more about it. If you hate the idea, you have to challenge it. Once the safe spaces start, the trigger warnings start, the microaggression starts, people are going to be saying less. If you say less, you're exposed to less, right? So this is the fight or flight. So moving away from the conversation is like almost like escaping your problem. And ask any psychologist, right? How do you deal with your problems? You face them. You don't escape them. Nobody's going to tell you. Nobody's going to give you the advice saying, "Man, forget your problems. Fuck them. Get away from there. Leave your kids. Don't, you know what? Whatever. You lost your job. It's okay. Just leave your family." That's not good advice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's not good advice starting at the age of 18, 19, 20, because they're going to go into the real world. And you know what? I don't want to get into what's psychologically, what the impacts are and all that stuff. I'm just trying to say, as a parent, like, what would you do? Would you say, great, yeah, go to your safe space, you don't need to hear this, I'm sorry that I said something that offended you, or you want to make your kid a little bit stronger?
Yeah,
and
there you go. Like you're bringing it in perfectly, because the one thing is to understand that this context exists. Okay, the other, for me as a parent, is to understand, how does your child actually get to the point where he or she is actually weakened or threatened by an opinion? You understand? Like, how do you get to that point? And again, I'm not saying like it happens, and we're sensitive to these things, because if it does happen, it means like there's obviously something that, like you said, like that triggers some sort of emotion or feeling or whatever. But the fact that your kid has actually gone to that step, she's there or he's there, I think that's much more serious than to be blaming the teacher. Instead of dealing with your kid on why,
it's the fine line. It's a fine line between protecting your kids and overprotecting them, I think.
Yeah. It's what it is. I think, without going into the details, and I forget what the book is called, but Jonathan Haidt, that's Haidt, if I'm not mistaken, in the book The Coddling of the American Mind, breaks it down. And the two major factors are overprotection, like exactly what George said, and two is social media. So look what they found that's interesting, right? They started seeing these trends in 2014, right? Gen Z, right, are the kids that are born in 1995. In 2006, Facebook comes along. Nobody's allowed to use it, right? You have to be 18 and over. Somewhere in 2008, I think, or 2009, and they could fact check this, you could be 13 and use Facebook. So there's a bunch of kids that lie that they're 13 and they start using Facebook. So now you have a lot of kids playing or looking at social media, right? Not sleeping, being engaged fully for hours in social media, right? And then they saw that there's a direct correlation to that behavior and how, when they get to 2014 and they enter college, now it's the jungle here. Because I didn't get to play with a lot of people. I didn't get to socialize as much as I needed to socialize. I didn't get the free time. I had
they only got the fake social media image of life.
That's right. So that's the theory. That's what they talk about in the book. Mm-hmm. But it works perfectly. Like, if you do the math, it's perfect. And the problem is that ever since 2014, 70% of the suicides have gone up in girls.
Right.
So girls are more sensitive to this. So we have an issue. There's an issue. There's definitely an issue. So you know what? All this stuff kind of like, yeah, we did talk about the free speech component, but it's also like, how do we take care of our kids?
Yeah.
I wouldn't want my kid to need a safe space or a trigger warning. You could disagree. You could be passionate. You could be civil. You could be decent and have conversation and communicate your ideas. And when somebody says something you don't like, you just say, you know what, I disagree with that. I strongly disagree with that. And that's fine. You know what?
I just think it's the easy way out when something is said that affects you in whatever way, that instead of dealing with the problem, you're dealing with the person. Like you're punishing the person that is talking and that is saying whatever that person wants to say, rather than turning around and looking at the real problem, where there's clearly something wrong with that individual, that with a sentence or a word automatically, like, I can't be here, I can't believe he said that, I gotta leave. Like, that's an issue. The issue isn't that the guy's talking. You know what I'm saying? So I just think that things are evolving in an opposite way. Like, instead of looking at a problem, we're dealing with, we're trying to control what you say instead of dealing with a problem that exists, whether it's psychological or whether it's anything else.
Yeah, so
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. No, finish your thought. Sorry.
I just think that it's the easy way out, thinking that we're solving an issue because, okay, let's just not talk about it, rather than really focusing on the problem.
Yeah, but it's also, don't forget, it's not knowing how to solve the problem directly, right? And I know Simon Sinek talks a little bit about that when millennials, because obviously these kids are entering the workforce now, and there's a lot of clash. They have different habits. They speak differently. They think differently. They have different expectations. And there's going to be a clash with the baby boomer generation and the silver hairs, right? The people that are like exiting the workplace or the workforce. Yeah. So we are talking about this. It's just that it's, in order not to have such a big clash and impact, you have the businesses in the schools that are kind of catering now. You know what? It's probably too hard to have all of these kids adapt. So the adult here has to be like, okay, let's cater to you. What do you need? How can we help you?
Again, for me, in my mind, it's the opposite. Instead of having 100, 200 people adapt to a situation, you're asking one,
because you're still a Gen X.
15, you're asking of a smaller number to adapt individually to 200 or 300 people. Like, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. We're Gen X.
It's almost impossible not to run into a wall.
We were raised by boomers, so we understand that. Like, I tell my dad what a safe space is, he's not gonna understand. He literally won't understand what I'm talking about. What do you mean?
Yeah.
I tell him what a trigger warning is, and he'll be like, and it's not because he just won't understand that.
The concept doesn't exist.
That concept didn't exist then, and it's like he can't imagine it because he doesn't see it. But now you got to deal with it, you know. And that's the idea, man. And you know what? If this exists, there's obviously some people that are for it. It happens that all three of us here disagree with it.
Well,
but if you go out in the world and you start talking about it,
but like, you're reading my mind. You're reading my mind, because we're all here agreeing. And while you're talking, I'm thinking in my head: is there something that we're missing? Is there something?
Yeah, we don't understand that perspective. That's what we don't get. We don't get that perspective.
Like, is it worse than what we're describing? Is it? I don't know.
No. I made sure I say the right things. I could say a lot worse.
Yeah.
I'm not even giving examples because I don't want to get in trouble.
Yeah.
But it's no. This stuff is out there, and the fragility and that sensitivity and that idea of being quick to get offended exists. And that's, you know what, you could take that and bring it into politics. That's what's happening with politics. When you have the no platforming and the cancel culture and all that stuff, that's the same way.
Yeah, like what you're allowed to say and what you're not allowed to say.
Yeah, at an older level, it's like, you know what? Don't say that. That's where the facts don't matter about your feelings comes from. Because people, you know what? People talk from a perspective of facts and reason. Other people want to talk from a perspective of feelings and senses, which is good. Both need to exist, but not if we need to talk about an objective truth.
Right.
And that's where the problem is.
Yeah.
And universities is that safe haven away from politics.
Exactly.
There was a rabbi, I forget, I want to give him credit, but he had broken it down like brilliantly. He said, there's the left and there's the right? So some people favor the left, some people favor the right. If you favor the left, right, you believe in state solutions, right? The state controls and distributes the power. How is the power created and distributed? That's the left. And a lot of people like solutions that come from the left. And then there's the people from the right that prefer solutions coming from the market, meaning the people, right? So the market will dictate how wealth is done. So how is wealth created and distributed? Well, the markets decide that. And then politically, it's like, you know what? You have a battle. That's fine. The idea, though, is that university is exempt from that. And you can battle all you want with no consequences.
Right.
See, when you experiment with communism, something bad can happen. You experiment with juntas and extreme rights, bad stuff happens. When you experiment with these ideas in colleges, it's brilliant.
It's dialogue.
It's dialogue.
You may like it or not.
Exactly.
You can contribute to it or not, but it's just...
You have a little argument.
You have the little arguments. You get the ideas across. You can be passionate, but it remains within civility.
And it inspires a new vision in people.
That's right. And you know what?
Or
Let's not kill that.
Or not.
Yeah.
Or takes away a bad vision, yeah.
But let's not like condemn this playground, you know?
Yeah.
The university, it's so beautiful. It's a beautiful place.
I just feel like now, and it's, we're seeing this a lot with celebrities. You mentioned cancel culture and all that, and it just feels like, the slightest thing they say could be misinterpreted. Look, obviously, there's the example of Kevin Hart, where that whole issue with him hosting the Oscars, and he had to step down because of a comment that he made, whatever, 5-6 years ago, of a joke about his son and homosexuality and all that stuff, and suddenly all the homosexual groups uh, uh, rallied against him, and suddenly the guy, under so much pressure, he caved in. Like, that for me is wrong.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that we're there.
Of course.
And that is also a testament how ahead we are, almost. Right? We're so advanced. Like 100 years ago, things were so much worse. In every facet of life.
Right.
Right? Yeah. Every facet of life, whether it's education, politics, poverty, children dying at birth, moms not making it through birth. Right? Diseases, dying from a fever. And we don't see it. And it's almost like there's no real elements to fight. And then these are the issues that, he said that. He said that and it bothered me.
Look, this is the thing, because we're talking about here. Obviously, I think we all three of us agree.
Yeah, exactly. We agree. Yeah.
The day, if ever it happens that your kid comes to you and says, Dad, so and so in this class said something and it bothered me. I just couldn't. I had to get up and leave. See, now, because it hasn't happened, I can imagine what my reaction would be. Right? My reaction wouldn't be against the person that said something. My reaction would be against my daughter. And there would be an attempt to, like you said, Chris, to get her to be stronger. You know what I mean? To just analyze, not to take things so personally, to respect the other person's opinion, and to understand where that opinion may come from, whether or not we agree with it. So that's how I think now. But when the time will come, is that sensitive daddy thing gonna kick in and say, he did what? Don't worry about it. We'll take care of it.
I don't know. And not to stick to semantics, but respect is a big word. You don't have to respect somebody else's opinion. All you have to do is just be decent.
Yeah.
Accept it. Take it. Be decent and be civil. Respect is a big word. Like if you respect, person. Yeah. If you respect, but what I'm saying is that if you want to respect ideas, there's a lot of ideas you could respect because they're worthy of respect. Some ideas are just worthy of decency.
Yeah.
Like not all ideas are good. And that's why you want to protect freedom of speech, because you want to hear those really bad ideas. Right?
You want people to expose themselves.
I don't know.
That's right.
I just feel, I think we've spoken about this last episode, or the one before that, where we grew up much closer. Obviously, we can't compare, right? But our mentality is so much closer to the one that our parents grew up with, or grew up in. And it just feels like the more that the generations are progressing, the further that gap extends itself from the way that you are and the way that your kids might be at your age, right? I don't know if it makes sense. I don't know if what I'm saying makes sense.
Yeah, I'm following what you're saying.
It's just accelerating so much quicker than I would imagine it did in the previous generation. And of course, look, we are a much better generation than our parents, right? They went through things that we didn't, and this is the whole point, right? The whole point is for each generation to start off at a better position than the previous generation ended, right? But on this issue, when we're talking about social issues and on social interactions, I have a feeling, and the way I see it, it feels like it's in a decline.
Well, look, what I wanted to say is that I don't want to sound like I'm shitting on this generation. Every generation below thought the generation below them was worse. Like our grandparents thought our parents were probably a little weaker or not as smart or not as intelligent. Our parents, even though it's not true, our parents are thinking that our generation is probably different in a certain way, maybe weaker here and maybe not as, I don't know, not as, what's the word I'm looking? Maybe. Yeah, that's a good word. So we're gonna obviously think the generation after us has certain weaknesses, but don't forget all these generations that to some people's eyes seemed weaker have their strengths too. But that doesn't mean, right, the younger generation now, I work with 22, 25, 28-year-olds. There's a lot of good stuff they have. There's a lot of positive. It's just that this is a bad issue because now we're dealing with suicides. We're dealing with anxiety. We're dealing with a mental crisis. You know what I mean? We're not dealing with a rebellion. We're not dealing like I left the house because I couldn't take my parents and I moved in an apartment.
Yeah.
Now the crisis is these kids cannot move alone in an apartment.
They're not fit.
They're not able to. They don't have the wherewithal. They don't have what it takes to sustain themselves because they're afraid of the world. They're afraid of ideas. So we're just like pointing out a problem that exists. So it's not all in the shitter. And I don't want people to think that. We're just obviously discussing something that is like, whoa, it's a big contrast to us. For me personally.
Oh, for sure. For
sure. It's a big thing. And I said,
yeah.
Well, what I'm saying is like it's a lot more present in the US, but it's coming here. It's imminent. It's going to come here.
See, it's tough for me because I mean, look, I think of academia, right? I think of the education environment. And Chris, you went into you studied into like a science field, so everything was like you said, everything is factual. Everything there's theories and all that stuff. So what you're learning is very practical. It's like, okay, that's what it is, right? Mm-hmm. I was, on the other hand, in a social science field where what we're talking about now didn't exist. And I remember being in classes. I studied, in poli-sci, where there were live debates in class. And I remember being in university when, the September 11 attacks happened and there was a debate, you know what I mean? And mm-hmm. It was, and I'm not saying that I agreed with everything that was being said, but at least the teachers had that, freedom of saying, okay, guys, this is what's happening in the world. What's going on. Remember, we were at Concordia when the Palestinian Student Association blocked the school because Benjamin Netanyahu was coming. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, of course.
They blocked the school. The SWAT teams were there. There were snipers up in the roof. The next day in class, I mean, we had that debate. There was the whole Israeli-Palestinian issue because we were studying, and people were just, of course, it got loud. I mean, the teacher was there. I mean, they control people's emotions and stuff, but there was never a moment, and I didn't want there to be a moment, especially in that field, where you can just block someone's thought. Yeah,
no, I agree. You're dead on with that, man, and it's Look, we can look. And it's fine because in general, in the universities, in academia, you have more left-leaning people, right?
That's true.
People tend to be more Marxist. They tend to be more on the left.
Even though I have some right-wing.
Absolutely. But like it's like 1 in 8. It's 1 in 10.
I would agree with you. I'd agree with you. Majority is a little bit more to the left.
Yeah. So, and it's fine. Obviously, it's bad when there's indoctrination happening. And obviously, in some fields, there's a little bit of indoctrination because don't forget, students listen to their teachers, right? And look up to them. And you know what? It's very easy for a teacher to mold a young person's mind, especially when they're very passionate, right? Anyway, but that's fine. You can have all the debate there. Prepare yourself there. So when the big stuff happens in the real world, you're not looking to escape.
Yeah.
Go out there and fix the world. You know what I mean? If you don't like what you see, change it. Do whatever you got to do to change it, but you can't escape it. George, that's the main issue.
George, this isn't something that has come up in your work environment at all?
Not yet. I don't work with young people. Not many, at least. Not that young. So I have never experienced anything like that. I never heard of the concept before Chris talked about it.
Yeah, and there's other concepts. That's another one. It's like, I'm not going to open the can of worms now, but we could talk about fairness, equality, affirmative action, all that stuff. I find it blends in well with all this. But the concern is, like, as a parent, how do you feel? What's the advice you give? Do you go after the teachers for upsetting your kid?
Well, I told you.
What do you do?
Well, see, look, I told you now. If I were to think right now, if that is,
well, hold on. As a parent, it's not going to start when I have to attack the teacher. It has to start before my kid gets there.
Well, yeah, I understand, but we're talking about hypothetically. Your kid comes home. See, and I told you, my answer is like today. My mindset is
right now. I have kids who argue about the dumbest shit in the world. Okay.
No, for sure. You can't compare.
And every time he comes to me, blah, blah, he did to them. And the first thing I ask is, did you tell him that you didn't think that or you didn't agree with that? Did you tell them your part? Did you explain to them why you're saying this to me? Did you say anything? You just came to me to come and do it for you? Or did you try doing it yourself? And they have to start confronting it themselves. I'm not going to go speak on their behalf.
At the same time, George, I think they're still at a relatively young age to understand the concept of dialogue, right? Like their reflex is, oh, baba, oh, mama, he did this, oh, he did that.
Yeah, but that's how they learn.
Yeah, no, but their problem is something like that they can control, not something I can control necessarily. It's not like I only bought one and there's two of them and they have to share it. Now what's the solution? It's not one of those.
Yeah.
It's if I always intervene and I always make it happy and I always make it easy, is that going to benefit them? I know our reflex is to do that.
Does it happen at all in your houses? Like you hear the kids arguing and you purposely just ignore them, thinking that they'll figure it out, kind of thing.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah. They have to do that. That's another one actually in the book. I don't know how they formulate it, but kids need structure, but they also need unstructured time. They need time where it's free play. There's no rules, and they could test theories. They could test each other. They could test their limits. They need that.
I always tell them no hitting, and if the other person's talking, he's allowed to say whatever he wants.
Yeah. Like we tend to be parents that our kids' life starts at 8 a.m. and until 7, it's like we've scheduled everything in. That's not good either.
George, just to get to the hitting, I've actually seen my daughters kind of shove each other, and obviously there's no punching in it, but like they kind of have that little reflex.
No punching.
Yeah, there's no punching at least yet. I hope there's never going to be punching.
And you're calling it hitting.
Well, okay, my version of hitting, it's like a hard caress. You know what I mean? It's like and
a forceful caress.
Yeah, like I've seen this happen, and I'm like,
the way it usually works, the younger one's going to hit harder. Because the older one understands the consequence.
Yeah, because the older one knows that. Look,
the consequence.
No, the consequence. I think Emma knows that if she pushes, she can hurt the little one. So she very often just doesn't do anything. So you're right. The little one usually is a little bit more aggressive, and there's been times where off the bat I'm like, don't hit. Don't do it. We don't hit here. We talk. That. But some other times I've seen them kind of shoving and kind of hitting each other, and I've purposely I'm like, let me just monitor from a distance, make sure that they don't get a ball off the head or something. But I just let them figure it out. I'm just trying to think if ever it has worked though.
No.
At some point,
it's not gonna work that day.
At some point, one of the kids is gonna run. Back to you.
No, that's right. George, say it. Finish your thought, because I was gonna say the same thing. I was gonna echo what you were gonna say. Say it.
Me?
Yeah, you were going to say that it doesn't happen that day.
It doesn't fix that day's problem, but I mean, if they do that 100 times, the 100th one is going to be way smoother and more logical. And
then out of nowhere, like magic, when they're 14, it's like, okay, I know how to deal with this.
and you don't know about every little argument they had.
And you don't care, but it's irrelevant.
That's what scares me. The 14 age group is what scares me because of the girl factor. If you were guys, you would think that, okay, whatever, you're old enough to kind of understand. But I have a feeling that when girls, and I could be completely wrong here, I don't know.
Just to make a point, George, what you just said, in certain cultures, in certain environments, that is a microaggression, what you just said.
Isn't that crazy? Fuck.
Yeah. Because you're equating, you're differentiating between girls and boys.
Yeah,
you're being prejudiced.
Yeah.
So you know what I mean. So it's like, how are you gonna say anything?
What makes you think girls are weak?
Yeah, or weaker.
No. It's not in the sense of weak.
Why should a parent worry more about it?
George, you don't have to explain yourself.
No, I know.
I'm just
saying. Just to get back to what I was saying.
I'm giving you a point how crazy this is.
First of all, my girls won't be weak, but I just think, and this is maybe just the male reflex in me, thinks that when these girls hit 14, oh my God, it's like something is gonna go crashing down inside me. It's like there won't be. I don't know. I hope there will still be some sort of communication. I don't know. I've experienced stuff with my sister and my cousins, and like you've seen girls go through that age group, and I don't know. I just hope it's smooth. I hope it's smooth sailing.
It's part of the journey, man. You got to go through it.
Absolutely.
You got to go through it.
It's just that what George was saying. You hope that at 14 they figure shit out. I'm thinking at 14, oh, hell's gonna break. That's when they're really gonna pull each other's hair off. I hope it won't happen. And part of me believes that it won't because I think we're raising them properly. But I don't know.
Yeah, that's what it is, man. Coddling is not good, and escaping your problems is not good because you know what happens when you can't escape. Let's say you can't escape a problem. You know what happens? Anxiety.
Yeah, everything gets.
You can't escape your body. It's gonna be there. The emotion's there. You can't escape it. What are you gonna do?
That's not the point. That's not the question, Chris. The question is, what happens when it blows out? Like, what happens when you cannot take it anymore? Like, you've bottled everything inside. What happens when the gate opens? Like that.
No, but it's not. It's the exact opposite. They're not bottling anything inside. There's no time to bottle anything.
Bottling it?
There's nothing. There's nobody bottling anything inside because they escape it.
They go straight to his problem. They go straight to a problem.
You know what? I don't think
instead of going through the journey of life, it's like I'm stopping the boat and I'm getting off.
I don't think they're escaping it. They're running away from dealing with it, but inadvertently, what they're doing is that they're still keeping that emotion inside them. It's still there. It's still
no. But the analogy is this. The analogy is they don't want to learn how to drive, so they don't get in the bumper car, right? And then life forces them to pick up a real car and they crash because they haven't learned the toy car. They didn't learn to do the bumper car. That's the analogy. You get it? It's like you got to be exposed to the little bumps, the little bullying, the little teasing.
You have to adjust to aerodynamics and G-force.
Exactly. The little unfairness, the little injustice that happened to you. You know what? It's going to happen that somebody's going to have a Kit Kat. He's going to take 4 and he's going to give you 1 piece. And that's fine.
3 because
whatever. Sorry. Sorry, man.
George had one earlier.
So you know what I mean? That's fine. But you know what's not going to work? If you every time that happens to you, you go get a parent.
Yeah.
And what's happening now? It's like in universities, like I'm going to go get a parent and I'm going to get this teacher fired because he didn't share his Kit Kat.
But you know what the problem is, guys? We're eventually to the point where they're going to go find the parent, and the parent will have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. It's like, what safe space? What the hell?
Yeah, what are you talking about? What is that?
What trigger warning? What are you talking about?
Well, most people now, I'm sure most people listening, they're probably thinking like, what are they talking about? You know what? I encourage people
you think there's not a lot of people that know about this?
No.
Yeah.
No. It's out there. Doesn't mean like just because people don't know about it doesn't mean it's not out there.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that it's out there, and you know what, man? You know, people well, it's gonna come. It's gonna come. You already mentioned 3 cases. Well, 2 cases and one that happened to me. So 3 cases right here. It's just not in the big proportions as what you see in the US.
Yeah, exactly. So the study that you read about these kids from that age group born around 95 moving into 2008 and forward.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's this counter movement against the screen time and the social media, and there's parents like us that are trying to limit it. This is the way out, no?
What do you mean this is the way out?
Like, I mean, we have now you read about this study and there's results now that the new parents are going to avoid it, right?
Got it. Yeah, you got to be conscious.
Because the whole planet's dealing with this new phenomenon that's social media since 2006. It's nothing that it's been there forever. So this is it. This is the learning curve.
Yeah, and So people that had the social media when they were already in college or university weren't impacted as much. It's the people that developed
the old way.
That's right. But the people that started utilizing it between the ages of 11, 13, right? Or say 11 and 14. Well, what you did is you took a big part of the development stage and you smeared it.
Put them in a bubble.
Well, you put them in the cloud called social media, a world that's a virtual cyborg
Their
world.
social life is virtual. It's not actual.
Yeah, exactly. The problems are not real, and you break up with people online. And you know what? Think about it. What do you do online? This is almost an online behavior. Online, if you don't like what somebody says, what do you do?
Shut them up.
You just leave. You unfriend them, or you delete them, or you just walk out and leave. And they're taking that kind of behavior and you're putting it in the real world, and you just say, "Oh, I'm not going to hear that. I don't need to listen to that." But it doesn't work like that in the real world. You know? So it's an interesting study. It's an interesting book. There's a lot of things in there, and obviously we can't break down everything. But it's interesting. I think where it starts is be conscious of it.
The fact that it's recognized, I think we're gonna find that.
Exactly, it's there, and a lot of people are realizing that it's here. You know what?
We have to tweak. We have to tweak how we use our little tools now, and be more conscious of its full effect.
Exactly, and it's learn how to use these tools. Know what's going on in your kid's life when you're not there, and you know what? Because obviously, every parent needs a break from parenting. So what you do is you go do your things, and the 4-year-old and the 5-year-old, it's fine because they're playing around with toys. But once you've left and you've gone into your little corner, and your kid is somewhere in his little corner looking at things you have no idea what he's looking at, that's when that happens.
Yeah.
It's like, the saying, life happens when you're busy doing something else. Like while you're resting from parenting, your kid is doing something. That's why I'm always like, I never leave him alone. I always come, and it's annoying. He's like, he gets annoyed, but he's at the age where I need to know what he's looking at. I don't need to monitor everything, but I need to know. Like I'll walk in and say, "What are you looking at?" Like he's watching Cobra Kai. Okay, Cobra Kai is fine because they're gonna say a couple of things in that show where it's gonna be like, oof. Like they'll talk about masturbation. They'll talk about whatever. They'll talk about different things like teenage talk. Very little, mild. I'm fine with that.
Do you guys have parental? Well, maybe George, maybe not George because they're still young. But Chris, you have parental controls there on the laptops and all that stuff. Like you put that.
No. So no, because maybe I'm not saying I won't. I'm just saying I haven't done it yet. But look, I expose them. Like I'm not the parents going to say don't say that word. Let me rephrase.
It's not so much about the language. It's more about the visuals.
Well, the visuals. You know what? No one really knows how early you could expose them or how late. You don't know where that balance is. Obviously, there's certain things where it's like the obvious ones, right? We try to really avoid, but certain things it's like, hey, let's try it. What did you think of that?
Right.
Like he's at the age where you hear a word, he's gonna laugh. Why are you laughing? Oh, because that's what it means. Yeah. And you laugh with him, and then after 15 times, you know what? That word is not funny anymore because now it's part of his vocabulary, and not only that. It's part of his vocabulary that he's going to seldom use.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, you just go with it. It's just like again, I'm coming back because it's important. We need to expose our kids to ideas that they dislike. And it's fine. They should dislike certain things. They can like everything. And they definitely shouldn't be offended with things they don't like. Yeah. Think about it. You say something to me and I just say, you know what? I don't have to listen to this. Bye. And I just walk out. Dude, it's insane.
Like, you could do that to somebody who's just constantly insulting you.
Well, that's what I'm scared.
Not because he's saying something that you happen not to like it, so I'm leaving because I don't value this. Because
you want your integrity.
It's not pleasant.
Yeah, like obviously. I mean, there comes a point if like it's hammered and it's just piling in. At some point, you're like, dude, look, it's over. You know what I mean? But not at first shot, like, oh, what did he say? Oh no, I'm out. Like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah, like I'll give you an example, something that could be taken out of context and be really wrong. We all agree that Hitler's bad or was bad, right? But you cannot deny the fact that Hitler showed some leadership and had great speaking skills. That's how he was able to brainwash people.
Yeah, to mobilize.
Now, Now I could say that, and it doesn't mean that I agree with him.
Because it wasn't all negative.
Exactly.
It means
I
you
think
love
he was despicable.
Well, no, he had those qualities. He just used them for
I
bad.
understand. Acknowledging that he had charisma means you're a bad person.
Doesn't mean I'm sympathizing with Hitler.
Yeah, but because
and it doesn't mean that I'm a Nazi. You know what I mean?
Because you're putting in a context the word Hitler, automatically would that be a trigger warning? Yeah.
Well, the trigger warning would be, guys, I am going to talk about a certain. Like, let me give you how a trigger warning works. A trigger warning would be like, guys, I want to talk a little bit
about it. Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about the incidents of World War II and how that started back in Germany. So I'm going to mention certain things. We are going to talk about Nazi Germany. Okay, so before I go
it's ridiculous
into more,
to me, man. That's
of course it's ridiculous, man.
Like, you don't understand. I mean, I just go back to my time in university, and we studied all the it makes no sense. It makes no sense.
Yeah. So that's where it's at. So our point with this show was to at least have people understand that it exists. It might be coming here. It probably is coming here. And hey, adjust to it. If you're a proponent of this kind of behavior, fine. Come in, let's debate,
Basically, if your kids are, let's say, 15, 16, 17 and above, you should maybe start having conversations. And if your kids are younger, start teaching them from now on how to deal with issues.
Well, I think
I'm sure there's a factor where parents don't want their kids to grow up and constantly running to the rescue has something to do with the parents needing to be parents.
I don't know about that, George. I don't know about that, man. We spoke about this last episode where we have
helicopter
parenting that
helicopter parents,
exactly, that are always above and they're ready to move mountains for you to just have the smoothest road to evolve.
No, but let me just make a distinction. The helicopter parent or the helicopter parenting style is bad. Why? It's because you're there solving all your kids' problems. Yeah, you're on top of them to make sure that they don't fall.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's not bad in the sense that you're being neglectful towards your kids. It's
exactly, but you're bad because
learn.
That's right. That's right. So there is, this is the saying. Sometimes you have to be unkind to be kind.
Right.
It sounds wrong, but there's truth in that.
You know what's scary? You know what's crazy, guys? That is exactly what you just said. Is exactly the framework in which our parents kind of raised us. It's like, yeah, I'm not kind. Tough luck, man. Yeah, I don't care. I'm not here to be a kind guy, or a kind mom.
Exactly. I'm not here to be your friend. And you know what?
That's exactly what I say.
If you were reprimanded, right? You were disciplined and reprimanded, and you were somewhere crying in the back. You know what the setting was back then? Your mother kind of feeling bad. Why did you tell him off? And your dad being, look, it had to be done. Right?
It was even a step further. It was you were in the other room dealing with it, crying, and they're telling you, shut up before you get more.
Or that. And you know what, man? Like
the reaction was like, it's okay, it's gonna pass. Don't worry.
Don't worry.
It'll pass.
It's gonna, exactly. And you know what? That wasn't such a bad idea.
No, but what a different mentality. Look at how things.
Because we don't focus on just the basics. We focus on our emotional state too much.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that we have to take and adopt the exact.
You know what it is? It's taking protection to another level.
Yeah.
It's taking that protective nature to a point where it's creating a disservice, what they call it.
Well, yeah, it's sheltering your kids, and you're not exposing them to whatever the real world is gonna bring them. I mean,
let them practice being adults, man. That's what it is. Yeah. Let them practice hating something and arguing against it.
And we can't also
let them practice dealing with something that this makes them fearful.
Yeah, you can't take the old ways and adopt the old ways and adapt them to your kid today, because obviously that was a teaching in a different world. You're in the world today, so you have to kind of adapt to the world today. But there's certain truths that have they've been truths for a long time.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't mess with those. Even though some of us want to think we're progressive, it doesn't necessarily mean you're constantly progressing. There's certain truths that you can't mess with. And all you have to do is just look at the animal kingdom, observe a little bit how the world turns, and you'll see that these are laws, they're physical laws or laws of nature or social laws that exist that you have to follow.
Right. All right, guys. Let's wrap it up. Anything to take away from this? What's the message of the day?
You got to beat your kids. No. Well, there's a lot of messages today, man. That we went through a lot of stuff. I think the message today is teach your kids not to be safe. Teach your kid how to be strong.
Yeah.
To take on the world. Like, let him fight the little battles so he can fight the world on his own. You know.
Right.
Whatever. Maybe somebody can phrase it better.
No, I think it's great. I think it's great. All right, guys, we're going to let you go on that note. Thanks again for tuning in. Thanks for listening. Again, subscribe, comment, like, share if you think there's value and if you think you have friends that might take something out of this. George, happy birthday, buddy. We're going to let you go.
Happy birthday, man.
We're going to let you go to sleep. There's no more partying. All right, guys.
Adios, muchachos.
Bye.